Hey Swayers, it's Karnak with Star Wars Armada Explained. We're going to be looking at a Rebellion in the Rim objective marked for destruction. So marked for destruction up there, I've got it blown up nice and big so you can read the text. At some point I will need to shrink it so you can see what I'm going to be displaying on Vassal. If you'd like to keep following along, go to the Star Wars Armada wiki, go to the Rebellion in the Rim expansion page, and you can pull the objective page up from there. So for this objective, it is introducing the new Purrgil objective obstacles, which are these space whale looking things that you saw in Star Wars Rebels, the TV show. Great show. Recommend you watch it if you have not. So I'm going to be reading some stuff from the book and from stuff from the card. So we'll try to get through this and follow along. So the first thing I want to talk about with the Purrgils is that in the Vassal module, it hasn't been updated with these guys. So what I'm using for stand-ins is the dust clouds because they're roughly the same length. You know, these guys are a little bit shorter, but you know, for most intents and purposes, they're about the same. So I'm going to use that as an equivalency, and I have them marked, and I'll make sure I'm pointing them out so you can differentiate between, you know, the obstacles, etc. So for these Purrgils, they do use some unique things. So I want to make sure I'm reading that off. Now again, remember they are still obstacles, and as obstacles, they do block line of sight, cause obstruction, etc. What are their special abilities? So when a ship overlaps a Purrgil, that ship suffers an amount of damage equal to its speed. When a squadron overlaps a Purrgil, that squadron suffers 1 damage. So based on how fast your ship is going, if it hits the space whale, it suffers that much damage. And it must suffer that damage to 1 chosen hull zone. You suffer that damage first on any shields that are in that zone, and then you suffer any remaining to the hull zone, to the hull of your ship for drawing damage cards then. And any squadrons that are moved and they overlap, they will suffer 1 damage. Any squadrons that are placed due to an overlap or some other ability that's moving them around, if they're placed, they suffer no damage. It's only when the squadron intentionally essentially moves onto that area. Okay. At the end of each round, starting with the second player and alternating, each player chooses 1 Purrgil obstacle and moves it to within distance 1 to 2 of its current location. Each player must choose a different Purrgil obstacle to move. So very straightforward for them. And again, when moving obstacles, as explained in the Rebellion in the Rim rulebook here, they can't overlap in their ending position. If there is any squadrons, yeah, they can move through ships and squadrons or other obstacles without any issue. Only its starting and final positions matter. If there are any tokens placed on the Purrgil as it moves, like objective tokens or any other kind of tokens, it moves along with it. If the Purrgil is overlapped by ships or squadrons, you just pick them up, move them out of the way, move the obstacle, put everything back. Make sure you're marking everything very carefully. And in this instance, and again, the obstacle, when it does move, it cannot overlap any other ship, squadrons, tokens, obstacles, etc. in the play area. In this instance, we're not having to worry about the move toward keyword. So when this obstacle does move, it can you can choose for it to remain in its current position unless a minimum movement distance is specified, which there is no minimum distance specified in this objective in this instance. So you can move, you can pretty much pick up that Purrgil and put it right back down if you wanted to when it comes to its movement. But like with all things, you know, I'll make sure I'm explaining this step by step as we get into the objective. So let me go ahead and shrink this down, and let's get into it. Shrink that to about right there, I think. Perfect. Okay. So in this example, we're going to say the Rebel player is first player, Empire second player. Now, let's read into the objective card. So, setup. Place obstacles as normal, adding the 2 dust fields, which are these are going to represent my dust fields right here. Adding the 2 dust fields and excluding the station and asteroid field. So you take all the rocks and the station, you chuck them out the window. You don't need them for this objective. So it's only leaving you with only a few obstacles. So you've taken the station, you've taken all the asteroid fields, chucked out the window. So then you place the obstacles as normal. So you place the regular dust fields and the 2 debris fields down. And that's all that goes down. And then what I'm using for the Purrgils, the stand-in, I have these dust fields facing up and down, and I've got objective tokens on them just to mark that those are the Purrgils for right now. So then the second player places the 2 Purrgils in the setup area. Each Purrgil must be placed beyond distance 1 of all obstacles. So again, these are obstacles, and they're obstacles themselves. So just like normal placement rules, they need to be beyond distance 1. So this black circle. So we're going to say, you know what, this Purrgil is going to go, I think right there is where a good spot is for it. Yeah, I think you can get it right there. Perfect. Beyond distance 1, beyond distance 1. Okay? And it needs to be beyond distance 5 of both players' edges. So in the setup areas where you're placing these guys, so beyond distance 3 is this first horizontal line, and beyond distance 5 is the second horizontal line when you're, just to represent for on Vassal, but on a table you put a range ruler down. Alright, so the second player places both of these, so we're going to place one there, and we're going to place one, and we're going to place one right here. Yeah, we'll do something like that. That sounds good. Perfect. Alright, now we've got the Purrgils down. So again, chuck out the station, chuck out the asteroid fields, place the obstacles as normal. Second player places both the space whales down. Great. Special rule. Each ship has the following critical effect. So remember, for critical effects, unless a ship has an upgrade card equipped, they can only resolve the standard critical effect, which is if they manage to get any attack into the hull zone, as long as it's not contained, they will deal a face-up damage card. But now they get something extra that they can choose from. Each ship has the following critical effect. Critical. And when it shows us just only this critical symbol, it's meaning that any critical showing die can trigger this. So any red, any blue, any black can trigger this effect. So if this attack is at close to medium range, remove all objective tokens from enemy ships. Then assign an objective token to the defender. After a player moves a Purrgil, if that Purrgil is at a distance 1 of a ship with an objective token, that player may choose and discard 1 objective token. Then that ship suffers 1 face-down damage card, I assume, and the opposing fleet's owner gains 1 victory token. So how does this all play out on the table? Let's throw some ships down. So all the obstacles have been placed. Now you go into deployment. We're going to say, you know what, the SSD is going to go something like right here. And Gazanti. And because the Rebel player is not very intelligent, he's going to put all his liberties right there in front of the SSD where they're going to get shot. Don't do that. Anyway, this is just an example. Don't actually play the game like this. Okay, so everyone's deployed. We'll say everyone is just going speed 1 for right now, just to make it simple. Okay. Alright, so everyone's deployed, all the ships are deployed. So remember, the Purrgils move at the end of each round, starting with the second player. So in terms of timing, if there is any timing conflicts between stuff that first player can do and what second player can do, if there is any end of round things going on, the first player resolves all of his end of round things first. Then the second player resolves any end of round things for him. So in terms of end of round, the first player resolves all of his stuff, then the second player can go on and then move a Purrgil. So we'll say that everyone moves ahead just 1 space because, again, they're not very intelligent when moving to attack the enemy. Everyone is just kind of moving towards each other. Perfect. All right. So now we get to the end of the first round. So now these Purrgils, again, it says they can move within a distance of 1 to 2. So you can take this Purrgil. We're going to make a clone copy of it. Make it easy. So it can move to within distance 1 to 2. So this is black circle's distance 1, red is distance 2. And if you want to rotate it or move it around, you can. But again, it can only move from where its original position is at. So if you did want to, for example, move it sideways like this, you absolutely could. But again, it can't overlap any other obstacles or anything else. So it might be in our best interest to kind of make it like a space whale, and it's going to move within distance 2, not exceeding that distance 2 portion. Perfect. So we've moved it there. So the second player moves the first one, then the first player moves the other one. He's like, well, you know what? I really want this guy to go get in the way. So he's going to move this one over this way. Perfect. There we are. Boom. All right. Now it's the start of the second turn. Now ships are in range and can shoot at each other. Or, for this example, we're just going to move everybody closer. Okay. So now, when you're attacking, we'll say the Star Destroyer is going to attack this guy here on the right. We'll say it's the assault version that throws the 5 red and the 4 blue. 5 red, 4 blue. Lots of critical symbols. So again, if this ship had been at just long range, you wouldn't be able to trigger this critical effect. It can only trigger at close to medium. But we're going to say he's at medium range, and you can say, I am at close to medium range. Instead of resolving my standard critical effect, I am going to resolve the critical effect that this card gives me. Now, regular contain will not stop this effect because this is modifying the standard effect. So if somebody uses the special rule critical effect, the only thing that can stop it is damage control officer, which superpowers the contain to stop all critical effects. So when you do choose to resolve the card in this way, if there is any objective tokens on any of the other ships, you remove them and you assign one objective token on one ship. So we're going to say, you know what? We're going to put an objective token on this guy. Boom. Now he's marked. Because if it had been, so that means when you go on to do any of your follow-on attacks, say the SSD is going to attack now this guy in the middle, and he throws this 5 red and 4 blue. If he wants to resolve that critical effect again on that ship, he has to remove it from its current target to then add it to the new target you just attacked. So you can't mark multiples in a fleet. You can only mark one ship at a time for each fleet. Meaning the first player can only mark one of the second player's ships, and the second player can only mark one of the first player's ships. You can't mark more than one. Because again, you remove them if you decide to hit another one with the special critical effect. So that assigns then an objective token to them. So then what does that provide? What is that going to give you? Well, it's going to give you victory points if you can manage to utilize this objective. So we're going to say these liberties are going to shoot. They're going to shoot up the SSD, and they're going to mark it as well. For whatever reason, the SSD doesn't have a damage control officer, so it can't stop them from putting the objective token on it. But if you do have damage control officer, you can stop this effect because it resolves just like any other critical effect. But again, standard contain won't work. Contain with damage control officer will stop it. Again, want to make sure I'm clarifying that. It's very important. Okay. So now when you get to the end of round, after a player moves a Purrgil, so we're going to say, you know what, this second player is going to choose to move this Purrgil. He wants to move it to get closer to this Liberty over here. Okay. So after he's moved it, if that Purrgil is at distance 1 of a ship, which he's at distance 1, that player may choose and discard that objective token. So we're going to take that objective token off. Boom. That ship suffers a face down hull damage. Boom. And you get a victory point off of it, which is worth 15 points. But now your opponent is going to do the same thing. He's going to choose the other Purrgil. He's going to move that to be at distance 1 of the SSD. He's going to deal 1 face down hull damage to the SSD and also take that objective token off. And he also scores a victory point. And that is marked for destruction. Very, very straightforward, very simple. Another thing I also want to point out too is if you do have something, if you do have like a weapons team slot, upgrade slot available on a ship, you can equip fire control teams, which allows you to resolve an additional critical effect. So, for example, say you have fire control teams on a Kuat Star Destroyer. It rolls up, it attacks a target, and it wants to use something like assault proton torpedoes. And this effect, well, if it as long as it rolls a hit crit on the black die here, roll this die set to hit crit. As long as it rolls a hit crit, for example, he can say, I am resolving not only the special rule, I'm going to exhaust fire control team to also allow me to utilize a second critical effect, which is my assault proton torpedoes. So not only can he mark the ship with the objective token, he can then also still trigger his assault proton torpedoes. So that's kind of neat that it's wanting to encourage more critical play. My only concern is that this objective, boy, it still seems really hard for the second player to get much of an advantage from this. Because sure, you get to move one Purrgil, but the other player also gets to move one. And as you can see, they're useful for trying to get in other ships' way, but they're also going to be putting it in your way unless, as the second player, you toss one of those Purrgils off in the corner where the first player can't ever use it. But then again, you're limiting your own options for trying to manipulate this objective. Now, if you do have something like an interdictor that has the grav well down, where you can, or the grav shift reroute, where you can kind of move the obstacles after deployment, definitely could see some additional benefits. But again, just seems like it's really hard to farm points. You can only farm a total of 15 points per round, which I mean really doesn't end up adding a whole lot. So I'm really not certain this objective is going to see a whole lot of play. I mean, maybe somebody will make it work, but for me, just looking at it from a meta standpoint, I just don't think this is going to replace something like Most Wanted or Advanced Gunnery or Surprise Attack. Anyway, that's marked for destruction. Of course, if you feel like I got anything wrong or if I missed anything, please be sure to point it out. These new objective cards, I've been trying to make sure I'm getting totally right on my first run through. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but again, point things out to me. I do respond to comments. If you have questions, if I need to explain something further in detail, let me know. Otherwise, hey, I appreciate you guys watching, and hey, I'll catch you next time.